Yeah, welcome to this class. In the last class we discussed how we can draw a matrix for the opportunities that and threats that an industry faces. What could be the different columns for this, and how could we give weights to each of these factors, and what will be the weighted score, and how will it get reflected for a company. So, we took a hypothetical company. The point that was made was the sum total of all these weights should add up to the sum total of all the factors, that is the weights of the factors that we took should add up to 1. So, we took a hypothetical company and we took factors which may be of interest to us in the present day scenario. The weights that are given, kindly note, or with reference to a hypothetical company, may hold also with respect to certain companies operating in certain contexts. Okay. So, then we looked at different factors for opportunities, different factors for threats. So, we said list 8 to 10 important factors for opportunities and threats. So, then we got the weighted score and we made a comment for each of these factors under opportunities and threats, which we considered, that is the sub factors if you really look at it. So, suppose you say look at this cheap Chinese imports. Now, how do you really compete in a market where you are flooded by cheap goods? So, it is only the quality of your company's product which should hold the sway or which should carry the day for you. This is the way you should be working in this market. Now, we move a little further. Now, what are the types of issues that you may be getting for the 21st century? So, let us look at the type of global issues you may have for the 21st century. So, this if you really look at it, what is the type of scenario you are realizing? You may see that increasing environmental uncertainty is what is characterizing the global markets now. Now, when this environment is uncertain, what becomes important? Environmental scanning will become important. So, you have to keep on scanning this environment, and this has to be a continuous process. So, this environmental scanning cannot be a static process, it has to be a continuous process, and it becomes more and more important in the present competitive scenario. Now, what is the implication of this for the company? To remain competitive, companies will have to develop better methods of gathering, evaluating and disseminating intelligence to those who need it. In other words, gathering intelligence, or in the present terminology business intelligence, becomes extremely important. So, you should be able to gather business intelligence. Sometimes you may crudely put it as market intelligence, but gathering this intelligence becomes extremely crucial for a company's operation in the present day context. So, this is what is a type of first issue that you are likely to have. Now, in this type of uncertain environment, that is where uncertainties are increasing, what is going to happen for organizations? To manage strategically, organizations have to become attuned to the many stakeholders who are affected by the company's actions. Shareholders will form only one part of the equation. What does that mean? It means a company should be willing to look beyond the shareholders. Okay. You may just wonder, what is this going on in the present day context? Are we not giving the prime importance to the shareholder? You can say you are giving due importance to the shareholder, but there are also others who are stakeholders in the company. These can be the suppliers of raw materials for you, may not be a shareholder. It can be also your end customer who is a stakeholder, but may not be a shareholder. All these people are affected by the company's actions. So, suppose let us say a company's product is priced higher. Whom will it impinge at the end? It will impinge the consumer. He is the stakeholder for you at that point. Now, suppose this consumer were to think that the price rise that you have effected is very high and he cannot afford it, then what is going to happen? It is very possible this will get reflected in the sales of the company, that is, your sales growth may take a dip. Now, whether the company is willing to really face this type of a situation, this is a question which comes in. So, these are the issues that are likely to come in this competitive market scenario which companies are facing now. Now, in other words, this strategic management becomes more and more important and more vital for a company's survival itself in the present day market scenario. The next issue which a company might be facing due to the national interest may be distinction between developed and developing nations will begin to fade as the developing nations take on a greater proportion of the world trade. So, this is what is going to or is likely to happen. This we refer to in a typical international marketing scenario as the changes that may be brought about due to the international product life cycle of a new product which is introduced. What do you mean by that? So, normally it is the developed country which invests lot of money in R&D and comes out with a product, and this product the company introduces into the world marketplace or the international marketplace. Then who are the consumers for this product which is introduced by this developed country? Normally this type of first mover advantage with respect to many of the products in the international scenario is enjoyed by companies from the United States, because they have put considerable money in their R&D, have come out with new products. They are taking those new products first to the market, and all that first mover advantage they are enjoying. Now, the question that next comes is, who are the people, that is, who are the consumers for these types of products? They may not be just restricted to the developed countries, they may also be from developing countries. That is, first the consumers from USA may take that product, then the consumers from other European nations may take that product, then the consumers from the developing countries, that is the Asian regions, may also like to take that product. Now, what is likely to happen in a market scenario like this? Any product, till it hits the market, all the attributes of the products will not be known till it comes out into the open. Once the product hits the market, what is likely to happen? There are number of competitors who are watching this product, how it performs. Now, when they find that this is the attribute of the product and this can be imitated, it is very possible that your product, that is the product developed by the developing country, is imitated by the developed country, is imitated by a company from the developing country. So, you have a situation where a company from a developing country is able to imitate the product of a developed country, that is a company of a developed country, and possibly put it back to the developed country's market only at a lower price. When it puts it back at a lower price, what is going to happen? It is going to affect the market share of the original company's product, that is from the developed country's product. So, this is what is happening if you really see in the automobile industry with reference to the United States, where the Japanese car manufacturers have really taken the US market by storm. So, in fact, almost all the cars, that is the major market share of automobiles in the US market, is really held by Japanese car manufacturers, majorly the Toyota, the Honda, taking a large slice of the market share. In fact, really cornering Ford, which is supposed to be the, what do you call, the father of the automotive movement itself in the world. So, you find that Ford itself is outstripped by the Japanese companies, no longer the leader. In fact, sometimes it is said Ford is off the screen. So, when you, because of this invasion in inverted commas by the Japanese companies. So, this is what is likely to happen in this type of a scenario. So, you have a scenario where the distinction between the developed and the developing nations will start fading, and this is probably due to the developing nations taking on a greater proportion of the world trade. So, these are the types of issues which you are going to see. Now, what is going to happen in order to protect the country's interests? So, what has really taken place? Now, you see some trading blocks getting formed. This is what I was mentioning to you in the earlier classes. So, what is the effect of the trading blocks? The effect of the trading blocks is that trading between countries in the block is easy, but between different blocks is made difficult. This is the type of scenario which you are going to get. Now, what is the fourth type of issue? As more industries become hyper competitive, strategy will become increasingly short term in orientation, thus creating a paradox. Can strategic management exist with only a short time horizon? This is what I was trying to tell you in the first few classes. What we started as corporate planning, we said we look at the horizon for a company for the next 10 years. Then we said you look at least for the next 5 to 10 years. Then the changes in the business scenario, we said the time horizon has shrunk. We are looking at a 3-year time horizon. So, we look at a 3-year time horizon. When we look at a 3-year time horizon, we said corporate planning got replaced by the term strategic management. Now, what are you seeing with respect to many of the hyper competitive industries, especially in the IT field? You are looking at 1-year strategic management periods. What is going to happen next year? This is the way it is. Sometimes when you are looking at such a small period and trying to take strategic actions, then what is likely to happen? All these types of actions that you are planning will have a short term orientation. For the next quarter, what am I going to do? How am I going to be guided in the marketplace for the next quarter? Now, will that guidance hold for the next quarter also? Suppose if it is not holding, I am prepared to change. So, it means to say your strategic management, the action planning is getting what you call shrunk to 1 quarter many times. So, this is the type of scenario which you are seeing. So, we looked at the example of Microsoft trying to cannibalizing its own product. The reason given by the founder of Microsoft was, suppose I do not cannibalize this product, my competitor will do it for me, that is, he will cannibalize the product. So, this is what is likely to happen in this scenario. Instead of he doing it, I better do it myself. So, this is how all these Windows 95, all those types of cannibalizing of products which Microsoft did and still remains a leader in the operating system even after this whole thing. So, this is the type of issues that you are seeing in the marketplace. This is something on the opportunities and threats side. So, when we look at the scenarios, we look at the external environment, we look at the internal environment. What does the internal environment really mean? The internal environment refers to the strengths and weaknesses of a company. The strengths and weaknesses of the company, whereas the external environment refers to the opportunities and threats faced by a company. So, when you say competitive landscape, you are essentially looking at the external environment of the company. When you say you are looking at the external environment of the company, what are you trying to do? You are looking at the analysis of opportunities and threats that a company faces. Now, you want to match these opportunities and threats with the existing strengths and weaknesses of the company. So, A company has got certain strengths, a company has got certain weaknesses. You want to find out how does this whole thing mesh, where do we really stand. So, this is called internal corporate analysis, that is the analysis of the strengths and weaknesses of the company, also referred to as organizational audit. Sometimes these terms are used interchangeably. So, you do when you do a SWOT analysis, the SW, which you are the two terms which you are referring to, the strengths and the weaknesses, they refer to the internal environment scan, whereas the O and T refer to the external environment scan. The internal environment scan and the external environment scan put together gives you this whole company scan, that is both with respect to internal and external. Now, when you do both these scannings, how will it help you? It will help you to formulate your strategic actions. Now, what is this internal corporate analysis? We look at the corporate strength. How can you look at a corporate strength? Corporate strength stands for competitive and other distinct competencies in the marketplace. So, kindly note this. So, your product should not just be competitive, but it should also, the company should also have other distinct competencies. For example, if I used to quote the example of Hindustan Lever, extremely competitive market network, very highly competitive, highly professional market network, which really carries the day for a company like Hindustan Lever. Similarly, for a that is its distinct competency. Similarly, for a company like the Tata Steel, extremely competent technical professionalism, which carries the day for them. So, that is their distinct competency. So, extremely competent technically, that holds the sway for them in the marketplace. Then what is a corporate weakness? A corporate weakness can be constraints or obstacles which check movement in desired direction and may also inhibit organization in gaining distinct competitive advantage. So, this is what you find many times in the environment of many public sector units in India. They are, according to many of the persons who are heading these organizations, the environment does not allow that freedom which a private company might enjoy for whatever reasons. So, you may say this is a public sector's company, all those types of things. So, but now when you are in the marketplace, the most important thing when you are in the competitive marketplace, you should create a level playing field. That is, each one should be able to play with the same advantage or disadvantage. Now, for some reason, if you are making the private company or a private player to have more advantages compared to a public sector company, then it impinges on the efficiency of the public sector company, and many times it may result in the demise of the company. That is what we are seeing, or we have seen after this liberalization or in this LPG era. So, the most important thing is to get over this weakness, because this can be a killer in the marketplace. So, you have to, a company has to really get over this weakness. Now, how do you go about the criteria for the determination of these strengths and weaknesses? The criteria can be looked at in different ways. One is historic. What do you mean by historic? So, you look at the past performance of the company. What do you mean by looking at the past performance of the company? You look at how the company has fared with reference to its sales, maybe in the last 2 to 3 years. What is the type of profits it has made? What about the capacity utilization it has achieved? Then the last 3 years, whether you can replicate it to the next 2 years or 3 years, to what extent you can replicate, whether the same environment is likely to hold, you see whether it is possible. So, this is called replication of the past to the future, but the question or the caution is, before coming to conclusion, should check replicability of past and future. So, you have to be very sure that the same environment is holding, the number of market players has not increased, all those types of things before coming to a conclusion on this historic criteria. The other criteria that you can make use of is what is called a normative criteria. This is based on judgment. What is judgment? You get the expert opinion in that field. Let us say you are looking at a highly advanced technological product which is put out by a company, then experts will be able to tell you what ought to be on level of performance. So, whether the company is performing as per the expected performance level. So, only an expert can tell you this. And the other one which you can think of doing, that is the other criteria, is what is called competitive parity. What is competitive parity? Firm must at minimum meet the actions of competitors, should identify dimensions of uniqueness. What do we mean by this? Because you are in a competitive marketplace, let us say your competitor is going through an ad blitzkrieg. So, you find that your competitors' products are really hitting the screens, whether it is the media or whether it is the newspapers, whatever you call, whatever you want to consider, they are able to come out with this ad blitzkrieg with reference to their products, which you may not be able to match for want of resources. Now, what is going to happen? In a competitive market scenario, that is likely to be treated as a weakness. So, you must at the least level match this competitor's actions. So, this ad blitzkrieg is, let us say, taking place every day. So, if you do not want to insert the ad every day, to counter this ad, at least introduce this ad maybe at a certain frequency level, so that this ad blitzkrieg by the competitor is taken on. Now, we look at what is called the critical factors for success. These are called CFS, sometimes also referred to as KFS. I referred to this ad blitzkriegs. Nothing amplifies this than a product like the TV. So, you should advertise a product. This is an electronic product, the TV, and you are a good, let us say, a reputed manufacturer. There is no way you can escape this ad, whether it is in the media, it can be on your TV screens, or it can be in the press, whatever you want to name them. So, you can never escape advertising this product. Now, suppose for some reason a particular TV manufacturer cannot afford this advertisement, then it may be considered a weakness. So, this is what happened to some of the earlier private players, TV manufacturers, after this LPG era came into being. So, what really happened? I can recall a company like Solidaire operating from Madras, now Chennai. So, what really happened? So, this terrific competitive scenario made a company like Solidaire, though nothing wrong with the product Solidaire's TV. Similarly, nothing wrong with there was one more product like the Uptron coming from one of the state electronic corporations. Similarly, the Keltron TV from the Kerala State Electronic Corporation, all these TVs. Now, what really happened? Because of this competitive scenario, you found that these players were not able to take on this competition by other major players. Now, with respect to Solidaire, what really happened? It found the going extremely tough. When it found the going extremely tough, it really, the existence of Solidaire itself got threatened. So, it started supplying components to another major market player. So, the other major market player's TV came with the components of Solidaire TV, but it was known by the other major TV player's market name, that is his TV. So, the name Solidaire itself went out of circulation. So, this is what happened. So, you are not able to really adapt yourself to the competitive scenario, you may find yourself out of place. So, not to mention this the names Uptron, Keltron, you do not even hear them now. Okay. The most important thing that one should understand is that out of these 4 criteria that I have listed, no single criterion is enough to evaluate a firm. In other words, you cannot just say I will evaluate or I will determine the strengths and weaknesses of this firm based on the historic criterion only. So, you may have to go in for a combination of these criterions. So, which is the best combination, you have to decide. You may like to combine historic criterion with critical factors for success, or you may like to combine critical factors for success with normative criterion, all the types of things. So, all these combinations are available to you, that is to a company, and the company has to take a decision. That also becomes an important strategic decision, kindly note that. So, how do you determine the criteria for making an organizational audit? What is the type of criteria that you are going to use? That also becomes an important strategic decision. Now, how do you measure all these strengths and weaknesses in a company? What is the type of measurement that you can adopt? Now, you cannot just make a statement, the company is very strong. The question will be asked, what do you mean by very strong? So, you have to justify that strength of the company in terms of values, in terms of quantitative measures, maybe the revenue that is earned by the company in the marketplace or whatever, all this has to be justified. Now, in order to do this measurement, a company can adopt what is called attribute measures. What is an attribute? An attribute for a product could be the characteristic of a product. What do you mean by characteristic of a product? Let us say a particular automotive company says my particular two-wheeler, let us say, is highly fuel efficient because the fuel is transmitted to the engine through more than one jets, maybe 2 jets or 3 jets, things like that. So, the company claims this as an attribute. So, it says that multi-fuel injection is the attribute of my particular product, that is particular model which is put out into the market. So, that is a type of attribute, that is a superiority of the attribute which it claims in the marketplace. Now, when it says so, what does it mean? It means that what do you mean by saying I am having this multi-point fuel injection? See, this just means that the chances of the vehicle choking or your engine choking for non-supply of fuel are minimized, maybe if not 0, the chances are very less. Many times when you are looking at your old Ambassador, one of the most trustworthy vehicles on the Indian roads. So, sometimes if you are driving, the driver would try to tell you, sir, the engine is getting choked. Many times people would never understand what do you mean by engine is getting choked. So, he was trying, he was in his language, he is trying to tell you the vehicle is going, for you the vehicle is going to stop. What is the actual meaning in the technical sense? That meaning in the technical sense is that for some reason the fuel supply to the engine has got stopped, maybe you had one port or whatever. So, now that type of a situation you may be avoiding in many of the newer automobiles. So, the question of the vehicle stopping for non-supply of fuel. So, this can be one attribute. Now, the effectiveness of this attribute you can measure by saying, okay, this is the vehicle, the model where we have introduced this attribute. How many times in the sale of so many products, let us say 100 products, that is 100 products of this particular model, have we received any complaints of this vehicle, the engine getting choked? So, suppose you say we got 1 or 2 these things only, otherwise 98 times we are really we have ensured that there is no choking of the engine at all, your fuel injection is perfect to that extent. So, you can more or less claim that it has been very effective, this attribute has been very effective. So, this is the other thing could be your efficiency. What is efficiency? In the normal parlance, what is efficiency? The efficiency just means that your what is the output that you are getting for a certain level of input. Suppose you are put in, let us say 100 units of your input and you are able to get 80 units as your output. So, you are really operating at a percentage of 80%, which is very good for a company. So, this can be your efficiency measure. It is dependent on so many things like the productivity components with associated with respect to your labor, the production line automation, all the types of things which are coming in. So, what is it that we are trying to list here? We are trying to list here all the different criterion that you can make use of for measuring the strengths and weaknesses of the company. The criteria could be historic, it could be normative, it could be competitive parity, it could be critical factors for success. Kindly note the type of mention that was made, one criteria seldom enough to evaluate a firm. So, you may require a combination of criteria. You may say I will combine historic with KFS, or I will combine CFS with normative criterion, all these types of things which are possible. And in order to do this criteria evaluation, or in order to do this criteria come out with the criteria, you adopt measures. These measures could be attribute, effectiveness or efficiency. Now, using all this, what are you trying to do? You create again one matrix that is called the impact matrix. So, you try to look at all these different criteria starting from historic down to KFS. Then you looked at the different measures, that is the attribute, effectiveness and the efficiency. Then you look at what is this impact matrix. Now, the impact matrix gives you, you have to visualize certain trends, that is what is likely to happen. So, this is what the IT companies are doing right now, and a company like Infosys coined this term guidance. So, which most of the other other IT players are also following. So, they keep on saying that our guidance suggests that. What is this guidance? The guidance is nothing but the trend that they are visualizing for the next period. That next period which they may be having in their mind can be the next quarter or the next year, depending on all that. So, suppose you see there are these types of trends which you visualize going from T1 to T4. What is the probability of occurrence of each of these trends? So, you start giving a probability for each of these trends. So, that is T1, what is the probability that this trend T1 will occur in the next period? So, you may say 20% probability. Now, suppose it is a 20% probability, then what is the effect that it will have on the 4 strategic actions that the company visualized, that is S1, S2, S3, S4. For doing all this, you may make use of a scale which can be the impact scale. It goes from this impact scale, if you see, is a Likert scale. What is a Likert scale? A Likert scale is a 5-point scale. here in this particular case you are going from 0 to -2 on the negative side, and then minus and then you are going to plus 2 on the positive side. So, when you are going on the negative side, let us say -1, it means it is the impact is moderately unfavorable. Suppose it is -2, it is extremely unfavorable. Suppose it is +1, it is moderately favorable, then it is +2, it is extremely favorable. Suppose it is a 0, that is you assess the impact as a 0, that means it has no impact, that is the occurrence of this trend and the impact on the strategies, that is the strategic actions, that is S1 to S4. If you really see, it has no impact, this particular that is what you are likely to conclude. So, in other words, you are going to make you are going to create a matrix, and for each of the trends that you have analyzed or you have visualized, you are going to predict what is the impact on the strategies that are possible. This is called the impact matrix. And what is all this? This is in the modern terminology, we refer to this as scenario analysis. So, we analyze the different scenarios. The analysis of the different scenarios is dependent on the different types of trends that you can project. Now, these trends that you can project and the analysis helps you in drawing the impact matrix. Now, all this is required for a company to do a competitive analysis. So, this is what I was trying to mention in the earlier classes. So, what are you seeing in the 21st century? So, what is the type of situation that you are seeing for a company? So, a company has to do its own analysis. It has to do in an equal measure the analysis of the competitor also. So, you cannot just afford to do your own analysis and say I am having this strength, so I go into the market, because it is very probable that your competitor may be having better strength than you, and you may be cornered in the marketplace, or you may be jolted in the marketplace. So, this is extremely essential in this particular scenario to do what is called the competitive analysis, that is, you should study competition. What do we mean by saying we should study competition? We should study competition under different headings. What are the headings under which you should study competition? That is, what is driving competition in specific industry? That is, what are the factors that are driving competition? Maybe it is the acute price wars that is taking place with reference to a particular product. Now, when you say acute price wars, what is the type of inference that you may be able to draw? You may be able to draw the inference that the products, they are more or less similar. Now, similar products in the marketplace, who is likely to enjoy a higher market share? The person who is offering the product at a lower price than the competitor. You may say he is offering the product at a competitive price itself. So, in effect he is offering at a lower price than the competitor. He is likely to enjoy a higher market share. So, sometimes the companies, because of the brand name and other factors associated with the image of the company, may not like to lower the price of a particular product, but may give in something like tie-in offers, that is you take this particular product. So, you can get a certain price off on the purchase of some other product of the company, that is you purchase the paste of this company. So, suppose you take the paste of this company, then suppose you take this a toothbrush from the same company, this much money off on this purchase of this toothbrush. So, what is going to happen in essence? The company is able to sell both the toothpaste and the toothbrush, and for the consumer what is going to happen? He is going to get an offer on the toothbrush, but he is saving on the toothbrush. Normally, if it was costing a certain let us say some 30 rupees for a toothbrush, the company might say you take this particular toothpaste, this toothbrush will be made available to you at half the price, that is rupees 15. So, a consumer stands to gain there. So, by just taking the toothpaste, then he can combine it with the toothbrush, get it at 50% of the price of the toothbrush. So, what is for the gain for the company? The gain for the company is, the company says I have not lowered the price of the toothpaste because one other player has come out with a similar toothpaste. My price stands the same, still I am able to hold on to my market share. So, this is just an example. Then the other thing is, what actions competitors are likely to take in the wake of increased competition. This is another important aspect which you have to look at in competitive analysis. So, we will look at this aspect in a greater detail in the next class. Thank you.